On Tech News today, the world's smallest PC, dash cams or crash cams, and camera phones that let you shoot now and focus later. Coming right up.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
It's Tuesday, January 7th, 2014, and this is Tech News Today. Tech News Today is brought to you by RingCentral. Here at Twit, we do everything in the cloud, including our cloud-based phone system by RingCentral. It has zero startup costs, and RingCentral is $20 per month per user. Try it now with a 30-day risk-free trial. Buy one desk phone and get a second phone free up to 20 phones. Call 800-543-9980 or visit ringcentral.com and use our promo code TWIT. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Mike Elgin.
I'm Sarah Lane.
And I'm Jason Howell.
Tech News Today delivers the top tech news like a pizza in 30 minutes or less. Well, Sarah, I don't know how to break it to you, so I'm just going to say it. CES just started 2 minutes ago. We're only 2 minutes into this.
I hope I can handle it.
It's going to be brutal today for those who are there. Lots of stuff going on, and we're getting a lot of news already from the show. So let's get straight to the top news. Alcatel is privately showing at CES a prototype solar-powered smartphone, but with a difference. The solar panel in this thing is actually in the screen. You'd put it screen up in order to charge the battery. The blog Pocket Lint says Alcatel hasn't perfected this technology yet, and then both the screen quality and the solar charging power are not ready for the consumer market, but this could be out by as early as next year.
It's not a post-PC world. They're just getting really small. Intel CEO Brian Krzanich announced the Edison, which is a Pentium-class PC powered by a dual-core Quark system on a chip, and the size of an SD card. It runs Linux, it has built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and Intel says an app store is in the works. Krzanich showed off the Edison with a bunch of prototype examples like a smart onesie. That's exactly what it sounds like. It's a baby outfit with sensors and blinking lights to tell you whether your baby is happy or not, because there's no other way to tell with babies. The Quark system on a chip was unveiled 4 months ago. It's designed for really, really small applications that don't need a lot of power.
Garmin announced new dash cams that automatically record your car crashes in glorious HD. The dashcams 10 and dashcam 20 stick to the windshield with a suction cup. They run and start recording automatically when you start the car, and as they record, the cams constantly delete older video. And when the cam's accelerometer detects the G-forces from heavy braking or a crash, the video footage leading up to the crash is saved, as well as the crash itself. They both ship in February. The cheaper one is $219. The more expensive one costs about $250. And that one includes GPS to record black box-like data such as date, time, speed, and direction of crash. The crash investigators are going to love this product.
Sony thinks that you are really interesting. Yesterday, the company announced a new life logging app that tracks and records all the things you do, like talking to your friends on the phone or listening to music on an interactive timeline. There's a companion bracelet called Smart Band that knows when you're walking or running or sleeping or even driving a car. And it even has what Sony calls a life bookmark key. You press that key and the bracelet is supposed to remember whatever it is you're doing. A separate core device supposedly can handle more advanced tracking and can attach to clothing or even the watch itself, but we don't really have more details on that yet. What we also don't have is pricing or ship dates on either product.
Remember that Litro camera that lets you shoot pictures now and focus later? Toshiba announced today a new camera module that does something similar for phones and tablets. The device has two 5-megapixel sensors plus a chip that processes image and depth data. The chip can also scale up both of the 5-megapixel images to create a new 13-megapixel photo. So it works just like a 13-megapixel camera phone. The resulting pictures can be refocused as part of the editing process. You don't like the way it's focused, just change the focus. Toshiba expects to have their new technology and devices you can actually buy sometime next year.
1 billion devices isn't cool. You know what's cool? 1.1 billion devices. That's how many phones and tablets will be running Android by the end of 2014. That's according to a new report by Gartner. Not only is 1.1 billion a lot, but it's a 26% rise over 2013. By comparison, Microsoft Windows will be on 360 million devices, and Apple's iOS and OS X systems will rise to 344 million by the end of 2014.
The Wall Street Journal reported this morning that Apple has made the unusual move of opening an official store on China's Tmall for selling iPads and other Apple products. Tmall is an online store run by the Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba. That means that Apple is actually paying Tmall's annual service fee plus a commission on each transaction. Very unusual for Apple. I mean, Apple already has its own online store for China, so Apple fans in China can basically take their pick between stores.
Sony's not done with wearables yet. At CES, the company announced a virtual reality headset designed to compete with Oculus Rift. It's called the HMZ T3Q, which is a really great name and very easy to remember. It has a virtual screen that can span up to 750 inches. It's obviously designed for gaming. It handles head tracking with what Sony calls low latency. You know what Sony doesn't call? How much it will cost and when we can buy it. It's like the CES thing. It's just, over and over. Who knows?
Well, we've got another report coming up from Robert, but first, let's take a break and hear from Ring Central. Twit does everything in the cloud, so it was a no-brainer to embrace a cloud-based phone system through Ring Central. Ring Central has zero startup costs and no PBX hardware to install or maintain. Our producers here at Twit love getting their voicemail through the email, and we can even get our faxes on smartphones. Ring Central also lets you program the order of phones that will ring when somebody calls your number. For example, it can ring your desk phone first, then your smartphone. And you can even determine how many times each phone rings before it goes to the next phone and tries your different phones. You'll never miss an important call again. Ring Central offers all-inclusive pricing as low as $20 a month per user, and you can start right now with a 30-day risk-free trial. And they have a special offer for TNT listeners. When you buy one desk phone, you get a second phone free, up to 20 phones. So call this number, and designated for Twit listeners. The number is 800-543-9980. Or you can go to the ringcentral.com site and use the promo code TWIT. And now let's turn to the conversation. Father Robert Ballecer is in Las Vegas covering the show for TNT and for Twit again. And so let's hear his report.
If you've been doing CES for a while, you know that there's a show before the show. It's Digital Experience PepCon CES 2014. One of the things that has traditionally defined CES are big TVs. It's in the DNA, and guess what? This year is no different. I'm here at PepCon for CES International 2014 with Samsung's U9000 series. This is their flagship, a 65-inch monitor with a curved screen, a 21:9 aspect ratio, and a 4K resolution. Corning has combined their mastery of Thunderbolt with all of their experience with fiber. That's right, fiber optics, the same fiber that runs data across the internet, across the country, across the world, they're now using to enhance Thunderbolt. Now, how does it enhance Thunderbolt, will you ask? Well, of course, fiber optics are less susceptible to interference. You're not going to have to worry about dropping speed because you're near a power outlet, but most importantly is distance. With a Thunderbolt Corning device, I can now get up to 60 meters from my devices, and I can still daisy chain them. Now, it's not just for Thunderbolt. Corning also has devices that will do USB 3 up to 30 meters. And, I believe we're going to see this technology incorporated more and more because glass is the future.
This is the Club Cadet. And they're calling it the future of lawn care. It's an all-electric cutter. So as the company says, zero engine heat, totally quiet. So, you like to mow the lawn at 4 in the morning, you can do it. And, I'll show you how effective this was or is. When we came in earlier, this was shag carpeting, 6 inches high. And Jeff, look at that. Look at that amazing job.
If you're a frequent traveler, you probably know about GoGo in-flight. It's a Wi-Fi system that lets you connect when you're at 30,000 feet and above. Now, the cool thing about GoGo has always been that I could connect my laptop, my mobile device, and get, communication when I need to, when I'm up in the air. But they've got a brand new service that they announced at the show that may make waves in the industry. You see, they're now going to allow you to use an app that you get from GoGo, connect through their Wi-Fi system at a reduced price, and send text messages. That's right. With the app, it'll look like it's coming from your phone. All your text messages will arrive on your phone like all your other text messages, but you'll be able to stay connected without having to pay a large rate, without having to go through a graphics-laden browser, and most importantly, without ever having to be disconnected. So maybe you want to ride. Maybe you want to ride, but you don't want to have to worry about falling over every time you tip your bike up. That's why we're here with Erica Squirlow from Can-Am, who's going to tell us a little bit about this bad boy, the Spider. Erica, a few of the things that I really liked about this, I love the Y construction. Yes. I love the independent suspension. It feels really nice. It feels really gentle. It feels like it's not going to get away from me, and yet you are going to get that riding experience.
You do. You can get a lot of speed if that's how you like to ride. And it is the Y frame that makes it feel so stable.
The thing is designed around a common core, a battery-driven system that has Bluetooth 4.0 and gives you 40 hours of battery life. Now, it's also a full duplex speakerphone, so you can use the internal speakers and batteries to give yourselves a really good sounding conference call. What I like about this is the flexibility of the system. You can add a shockproof case if you're going to be using it in the wild. You can add a fashionable case if you want to use it as a device for your end table. You can add different mounts so that you can put it on your bicycle, your car, a tree, a basketball pole. Basically anywhere you want to mount it, you can find a place to do it with the Fugu systems. Now, here at the International CES 2014, they've announced a brand new genre of product, and that is silver ion exchange. So they've basically taken the same process, and Corning has given a finite control of the amount of silver ions that are embedded in the glass. Now, this is not your standard antimicrobial product, because what it is the silver is actually inside the glass. It's not a coating, it's not an emulsion, it's not a powder, which means it will never wear out, it will never fall off, and it will never scratch away. You know, TNT, I think we've seen more of an evolution of a lot of tech rather than any revolutions. Yes, things are faster, yes, things are smaller, yes, things last longer on their given battery, but you know, aside from a few big screens, aside from a few interesting home media devices, I think the overall tone here at PepCon has been to take the technology that we have right now and just make it that much easier to use. What will be interesting is to see what happens tomorrow when the actual show floor opens and we get to see what some of the bigger players have done with technologies like Corning's new Gorilla Glass or their fiber or Samsung's new big TV or even what we see from the Transporter and yes, even pleasure vehicles like what we saw from Can-Am. Until then, I'm Father Robert Bellis here, sending it back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Robert. Well, Apple isn't at CES exactly, but they're always there in spirit, aren't they, Sarah?
I think Apple really wants us to believe that they could not care less about CES. But if you go to CES, you know, among all of the big halls that you can walk through, there's an entire hall devoted to third-party applications for iDevices and even some Mac stuff. So you have to assume that Apple's got their spies there, making sure that they know what's really going on. But what Apple did do is try to take a little bit of the wind out of everyone else's sails by announcing some great numbers for their App Store. They said customers in the App Store spent more than $10 billion in 2013. And what's interesting about that number is over $1 billion happened in December alone. So huge, huge, huge holiday season this year. Customers downloaded almost 3 billion iOS apps, and Apple says that's the most successful month in the history of their App Store. 3 billion iOS apps. That's a great month.
That's
Apple
amazing.
paid 15.
That's amazing, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but at CES, you can imagine why they don't want to be there. It's because they come off looking like an ordinary company, but they're literally everywhere, and in both apps and devices. A lot of these toys you're seeing, a lot of stuff that Robert was showing are in fact Apple devices, and it's a pretty massive presence.
I think you definitely make a good point that Apple doesn't like to just sort of be, you know, in the crowd, right? You know, at CES, Samsung's huge, Microsoft's huge, Apple would be just sort of another one of those companies. So they don't really like to do that. They want to have all of their own events. They want to have, you know, their own press releases that aren't bundled in with anybody else. What Apple does have, though, is all of the money. It's always touting that it pays out to developers. Apple paid out $15 billion to iOS app developers. That's a cumulative number. That's to date. But that's something that the company always leans on because they want developers to keep developing for iOS first, because there's still that perception, as much as it might not be true or less true going forward, that if you develop for iOS, you're going to, as a developer, get more bang for your buck, even though the market share continues to give way to not just Android, but other platforms like Windows Phone. I guess at this point, it's kind of like, we understand that the market share for iOS in the smartphone world, globally particularly, is going to continue to drop. How long can Apple continue to woo developers? Because I'm a little surprised that in this day and age, there are still so many apps that come out for iOS first. And Jason, I know, being an Android guy, that doesn't always happen. It used to always happen. It happens not as often anymore, but it's surprising that that's still the case.
Yeah, I mean, it's continually the story, right? And I keep waiting for that to kind of change a little bit, and for just the sheer number of devices on Android to kind of change that curve. But no, it really seems like if you're a developer and you want to make a lot of money, as much as it pains me to say it, Apple and iOS is kind of kicking butt right now, and that's pretty much known. And the results bear truth to that. That's why developers flock to iOS. If they have to choose one platform, why they do it to iOS before Android.
That's another weird thing about Apple versus Android, which is that Apple customers on average tend to be much more active in multiple ways. They're more active online, they're more active with downloads, they're more active watching media, and most importantly, they're more active paying for things. Right. Not only are iOS developers able to charge money and get more money for it, they can also get away with charging and building more expensive apps. So there's really a lot of money in the iOS sphere, even if Android numbers continue to go through the ceiling. Obviously, they're gigantic right now. Even if that happens in the U.S., I mean, and in Europe and Japan and so on. So it's really a question of where the money is, and today it's definitely in the iOS App Store. So there's a lot of weird things at CES this week, and one of the weirdest, I think, is these flexible, bendable displays. Now, don't confuse bendable with curved. They're curved displays that are sort of like try to give you the IMAX experience where it's sort of a wraparound TV. But then Samsung and LG are showing bendable displays. They're flat 1 second, and then the next minute they're curved when you push a button. They use hydraulics or some other secret process to actually bend these displays. So Samsung's is an 85-inch prototype, which they call, creatively, the bendable TV. And LG has a 77-inch OLED display. Now, a lot of this seems to me like just so much showing off. I mean, Samsung has really been active in showing off this kind of technology. In fact, at CES in 2011, they showed off a 4.5-inch flexible, bendable display. And of course, there are a couple of phones out there that have either flexible or bendable. LG has the LG G Flex, and it actually gives a little, and that makes a lot of sense. But for TVs, I mean, it seems to me like a gimmick that's even more of a gimmicky, overpriced thing that consumers don't really want than some of the 3D solutions that require glasses. I can see this being something like a status symbol for extremely wealthy things. And of course, these things, when they ship, if they ship sometime in the future, are going to be monstrously expensive. What do you think, Sarah? Are these? Is there any value to being able to bend or curve your TV?
Okay, well, all right. So I want to give this a fair chance, kind of like how I give 3D TVs a fair chance, right? Because we all said that seems cool, but you have to sit in a specific place in your living room, or you have to wear glasses, and wait a second, nobody wants to do that. Dead on arrival. So bendable displays. I've got a new living room behind me here, and it's a sort of a challenging space.
It's a very nice place you got there.
Thank you so much. It's it's coming along, but I've got sort of a narrow little space for my TV, and it's kind of like, well, what do? Do I mount it on my wall at an angle? The curved display, at least in my mind, kind of makes sense because I could be more in like a little corner of the room and be able to see more of whatever's playing. So I can see this being, in specific cases, really, really helpful. I just don't know how many people have that sort of specific problem. And maybe there are other problems that I'm not thinking of, but it's like, it's a solution that's so specific that it seems very niche, and that's not going to sell millions of TVs.
Yeah, you can also imagine that maybe people have different use cases for their TV. maybe you're going to watch TV and you're going to sit way back on the couch, but then you're going to play Xbox or something like that. You're going to sit closer, and then you want a little bit of wraparound to give, maybe it gives you a different feeling while you're playing, that there's sort of peripheral vision almost. And that's probably not good to sit, 5 feet from a TV or whatever, but who knows? There may be all kinds of use cases for this. And speaking of games, Sarah, is the Chinese government playing games with consoles? What's going on there?
Well, what they have done is they've, at least temporarily, we don't know for how long, lifted a ban that's been in place for 14 years on selling video game consoles. What's really interesting about the Chinese gaming market is China is obviously a huge market, and it's world's third largest video game market. But that's for PC games and mobile games, because game consoles just aren't for sale unless you're talking about black market stuff, which that is possible to get, but officially you can't just go and buy those from the store. In the video game market in China, revenues were almost 14 billion last year. So huge, huge, huge market. PC games are about 2/3 of that. Mobile games around 14%. Even browser games factor in there a little bit. But you've got all of these kids who didn't grow up with Xboxes or PlayStations or Nintendo games, and this is since the year 2000. So back then, the reason that the ban was put in place it initially was because the Chinese government said there's going to be an adverse effect on the youth of China.
Yeah, if I recall, there used to be kids going to like addiction camp, and I think a couple of people actually played themselves to death. Just kept playing and playing and playing until they just dropped dead. So I don't know if those problems have gotten better lately.
Unfortunate. I find it hard to believe that a console is to blame. It's probably more an addictive personality. But State Council over in China said in a statement, the suspension of the ban will permit foreign invested enterprises, again, like Nintendo's based in Japan, etc., to make game consoles within Shanghai's free trade zone. Then you can sell them in China after inspection by cultural departments, whatever those inspections are. We really don't know. So I guess it's kind of interesting to me. You've got a huge, huge, huge potential market. However, about 70% of gamers in China, this is according to Hong Kong-based brokerage CSLA, earn less than the equivalent of about $634 a month, US dollars. So if a game console is around $500, who's buying those? I mean, if you've already got all these people gaming, particularly with free PC games, and saying, why would I need something expensive? I'm already enjoying my games. How do you convince that market that it wants something so expensive, especially when there's no real nostalgia to speak of?
That's true, but they may be playing it for the future. I mean, China's getting wealthy, and the wealthiest in China are getting wealthy very quickly. And so in Shanghai and the east of China, there's lots and lots of people with lots of disposable income these days. And so this could be a play for the future. I mean, if you're looking out over the next 5 years or 10 years, there are going to be a lot more people who are going to be spending a lot on gaming across the board. I also wonder if these become popular, if Western console games become popular, if they'll be pirated or copied the way that iPhones and things like that are, or if the games will be pirated and copied, given that the gamers there are really used to pirating and using pirated software. So it's going to be a challenging market for all these companies stepping in there and hoping to get rich in the lucrative Chinese game console racket. Well, there's a really interesting initiative going on that was announced yesterday by Stephen Wolfram, the rock star scientist / entrepreneur behind Wolfram Alpha. He came up with this initiative called the Connected Devices Project. And what this thing does is it adds what he calls, quote, sophisticated computation and knowledge to the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things being thought of very broadly as including all of these sort of smart gadgets, the smart toothbrush, the smart toaster, the smart everything, as well as embedded sensors and the kind of like internet-connected stuff that's going to be absolutely everywhere for the next few years. What he wants to do is he wants to connect all of them, he literally said all of them, with each other. And so the first step in this is to put all of these devices into a database so that every single device on the market has a very detailed database entry that includes the price, the size, the weight, the dimensions, the capabilities of every single device. He's already got devices from some 300 companies in the database. The next step is to make them seamlessly integrated using his Wolfram language, obviously written by Stephen Wolfram, and then a driver in these devices to let them connect to each other. Now, this is one of those things, you know, if anybody can do it, it's Stephen Wolfram, because he tackles these enormous projects that if you heard them described, you'd say, there's no way you're going to do that. There's no way, if somebody described Wolfram Alpha, you'd say, no, that's not going to happen. But he does that kind of thing, and he's really good at very, very large, impossible math-based projects like this. So maybe he can do it. The problem is that I wonder if people are really going to accept having their smart devices plugged into the Borg. In order to have access to every other device, in order for all devices to be connected, your devices have to be connectable by other devices. And then the data from your devices is going to be sucked into this giant machine and then crunched with all the other data to be used by someone somewhere. Is there any way, Sarah, you think that he's going to get away with this and get buy-in and opt-in by the users of every smart device that is going to be coming out over the next few years?
Don't you want all of your devices to talk to each other? I mean, I think that is the first step in having devices that no longer perform just 10 things really well. You know, we'll stop thinking about, ooh, I need to turn on a light, so I've got to go over to that corner of the room. It's like we'll be moving toward this age where you kind of just have to think about doing something and you'll know, oh, I can do that from here because I can kind of do everything from my little hub that's mobile with me. I love that idea. I mean, right now, I feel like my smartphone is my hub for the internet, but not for other devices. I think the only thing I can technically do from my phone is play music on my Sonos. And that's great. I love that. I mean, it still feels like magic to me. So more of that I think is great. Obviously, you know, we're gonna have to see if this language is, you know, works as advertised. But as you mentioned, Stephen Wolfram is certainly the person to do it. And I'm really glad that we're moving in this direction. You know, we see little snippets of this, smart thermostats and smart light bulbs, and they still seem like novelties, but in a few years they won't be. They'll just be the way that we all have learned to behave, not just in the home, but everywhere.
Speaking of connected, Sarah, what do you have in the mail department?
Oh, I killed it, but I've got it back now. Rich in lovely Cleveland says, he was talking about how we were sort of making fun of those smart toothbrushes from last week. Says, thinking about the smart toothbrush and the recent trend of trying to connect everything to the internet, I think it's a trend that will quickly burn out with only the most useful products surviving beyond a niche market. It reminds me a lot of when cell phones were really reaching the masses and there was this glut of products based around that tech, from simplified phones for kids who could only call a few numbers to tracking devices that you'd never lose your someone. While you can still buy these products, they never had any mass market penetration. I think smart silverware and toothbrushes will be in the same camp. I don't think that there are novel uses for connected devices. Nest, he mentions as well. He also says, I love what Belkin is doing with their Wemo line. Rich says, I think the added convenience of a connected device will have to be considerable for people to deal with the added complexity.
Yeah, it's a great point, and you know, I think the difference, as Rich mentioned, is that when smart devices make their own decisions and they go beyond your control and they do things that you didn't expect them to do or you didn't want them to do, they suck, basically. And when smart devices are like the Wemo, they turn on the light when you tell them to turn on the light. They're awesome. So I think that's really the key to smart devices. You don't want smart devices that are too smart. You want them to be a little bit stupid and kind of do what they're told and keep you informed about what they're doing and when and why they're doing it. Beyond that, I think smart devices are going to fail if they just give us a sense. I mean, imagine a world where almost all of your devices, your coffee cup is smart, your toothbrush, your toaster, your skateboard, everything is smart. You know, pretty soon all these smart devices start sort of working against you in concert, or you know, you sort of lose control of them, and that's going to be terrible, and nobody wants that. So, okay, well, thank you, Rich in lovely Cleveland. Let's see what we have in other news. Apple was awarded a patent this week for a concept that could allow users to crowdsource street-level three-dimensional mapping by simply taking pictures on their phones and uploading them to Apple Maps. Sounds pretty googly to me, but the idea is to enable Apple to crowdsource the equivalent of Google Street View cars. iPhone users could take panoramas or the equivalent of photospheres and upload them automatically into Apple Maps, the same way that Google allows Google users to do that for Google Maps. But as an alternative to Google Street View, this is not going to cut it, because nobody's going to take pictures in the middle of the desert or go to bad neighborhoods just to help Apple make a better Apple Maps. I don't see this really going anywhere. What do you have in other news, Sarah?
Well, I've got something kind of fun in the rear department. T-Mobile CEO John Legere crashed AT&T's CES party. It was at the Palms Hotel in Las Vegas last night. You could definitely tell because he was wearing his T-Mobile t-shirt. And according to him, he was told that if he didn't leave immediately, he would be charged with trespassing and was escorted out by security. In fact, Legere told Recode, "I just wanted to hear Macklemore." That was the featured musical act. Around the same time that he was getting 86 from the club, AT&T Mobility CEO Ralph De La Vega was on stage at the Audi keynote. He was announcing that AT&T was replacing T-Mobile as the provider of wireless services for the cars, Audi cars. T-Mobile is obviously expected to announce their next phase of their Un-carrier effort in a press conference tomorrow. So, this is all a little bit silly, but I really don't think those CEOs like each other.
Yeah, I think you're right, and let it be a lesson to all of us. Whenever we're giant companies, always make sure you have bouncers at your CES event. Well, that's it for today. Please share your news tips, leaks, inside information, and feedback in our new Google Plus community. Just go to G+ and go to the community site and search for Tech News Today. And also send us email at tnt@twit.tv, or leave a message by calling 260-TNT-SHOW. Also, upvote the stories you'd like to see us cover on our subreddit at technewstoday.reddit.com, and visit the Tech News Today website at twit.tv/TNT. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.